We've got some terrific announcements today. We wanted to use the site of one of the projects that we're going to be announcing today, which has a long and esteemed history. So, we live in a time in which, coming out of the pandemic, a lot is different, right, to say the least. And there's a lot going on, a lot of things that are unexpected, right? It's here in the city, nationally, globally. One of the things that we've had to confront as a city is that as we have grown, as there have been changes in the national economy of late, is the shortage of housing. This is an issue that has been a hot button issue nationally for a long time, but it has been primarily a big city issue up until fairly recently. I think a lot of you know I spend a fair amount of time talking to other mayors around the country, and if you asked 5 years ago, 8 years ago, even 10 years ago, most of America's big city mayors, what's the biggest issue for you right now in your cities, they'd say it's housing. It's the shortage of housing and all that implies, right, about transportation and mobility mobility both physically as well as socially. And it was a matter that had not really hit the rest of America yet by then, just before the pandemic. But things have changed. Things have changed in the national economy in a number of ways during the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic was a great disruption to the national economy and to supply chains and such. And among other things, housing has become a pressing issue everywhere, here in New Bedford, here in smaller and mid-sized metros everywhere. And so while it is very much so a national problem, we don't purport here to be able to solve it all at once. We want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to deal with it directly. And so we announced a few weeks ago that we would be launching something called the Housing Expansion Initiative, which would seek to do what the name implies, which is to add units of housing. The idea obviously is by increasing the supply of housing units, and the city would tend to push down on price and to make housing more affordable and more available to more people. The city, of course, is not in the business of building housing. That's what developers do, but we have tools at our disposal to facilitate the development of housing. And the idea here in New Bedford is that we want housing at every level. We want higher end housing. We want housing that's affordable for those who are really struggling to get by, and everything in between. And so that's been our approach all along. Fortunately, we've have now still more tools at our disposal, and that includes the American Rescue Act plan, which brought to this city some $82 million in total in funding for a number of important uses that we've laid out in a plan a few months ago. One of the uses was to further our housing expansion initiative. And so today, we put out an application, released an application for developers to submit to the city to get that funding. That was headed up, the orchestrating of all that was headed up by Pat Sullivan in his office. And Pat will come on up and talk a little bit about that. But we're pleased today to announce that of all the eligible applicants, that is to say applicants whose developments would add housing units to the city, all of them are getting funded through a combination of ARPA funds as well as home funds together. The federal funding that's been made available, something that Congressman Keating has supported, Liz Rhoda is here on his behalf today. Our entire federal delegation has supported those things, and we're putting it into action here in New Bedford. So today we are announcing the awarding of $11.2 million in funding for 5 housing developments that I'll talk about in a second. And again, the funding comes from both ARPA funds as well as home funds. These projects will total some 149 new units of housing, including right here at the former Holy Family School. Altogether, this will account for a total of $71 million in investment. So this roughly $11 million, which is the largest all-at-once investment of public funds into housing in the city ever, at least in any of our memories, will leverage some $60 million in other investments. So a total of $71 million in new housing. Let me tell you a little bit about the projects. So there's this one here, which I will go into a little more detail about. Of course, the former Holy Family School, which will be getting $1.38 million totals, and to add some 15 units of housing. It includes the Caravella development at 278 Union, which will develop 53 units of housing. That total award is $3 million. 117 Union Street, which will add 45 units, and that will be getting $3 million. The development at it's referred to as 18 and Union, that's at the bottom of Union Street, the former National Club, and the former Beckman's Marine Supply Store. That will be adding 28 units and will be getting an award of $2.85 million. And then finally, right around the corner here, right on the other side of St. Lawrence Church, is the former Civil Defense Building, which we've all been watching crumble for many years now. The city, along with Whale, and Terry from Whale is here will add 8 units of housing with an award of $1.05 million. So some of these projects are already under construction or about to. You saw the fence go up around the Union Street, the bottom of Union Street development. Already, that they're getting going. As soon as they were told they were getting the funding, they got the show on the road and they're immediately going. This one will be starting construction soon, as well as 117 Union. Steve Beauregard, who's heading up New Bedford Development Corporation, has done a great job pulling together that funding is here. Thank you, Steve, for all of your work on that development. Those guys are getting going really soon. And the other ones are just down the line. Hillman Street, the Civil Defense Building is getting ready as well. That property still has a couple of pieces that have to fall into place, but we're confident that that's going to happen. And Terry can tell you all about that as well. So there you have it. Some $11 million, which leverages another $60 million to create roughly 150 units of new housing. And this has been an effort of a lot of folks, and we'll talk about this particular development in a moment. I'll ask Jerry and Colleen Kavanaugh to come on up and say a few words about the great work that they're doing here. But I want to thank the City Council for their support. I'll ask Ian April to come up along with Councilor Shane Burgo in a second. Pat Sullivan and his team have done a wonderful job making this happen in a way that is entirely compliant with federal law, is useful to the developers, is swift, so that we don't continue to watch the clock of inflation run on us, the meter of inflation run on us. And I can't say, and you'll hear from Pat in a second, I can't say enough about the work that is done. Elise Raposa, who has ably shepherded all things ARPA as the ARPA czarina for the city, and great job on her part as well. I want to call up City Council President Ian April to say a few words, and I really appreciate the work that the council has done, Ian, under your leadership to get ARPA funds out the door so that they can go to work for the residents of our city, and in this case, the residents of our city who need housing so that they can raise their families and live a good life right here in our great city. Ian.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mitchell, and I'll be somewhat brief as my colleague in government, Shane Burgo, who chairs the New Bedford City Council Committee on Affordable Housing and Homeless Affairs. I know he has a few remarks to make as well. This is a great day for all of New Bedford, and the mayor pointed it out. We don't want to see folks, especially those who are in need of affordable housing here in the city of New Bedford, leave this community to go elsewhere to live. This is a great place to live, work, and play. And now with the creation of these units, about 150 of them, we are now able to sort of get these individuals the help that they need when it comes to finding suitable housing. One thing we heard throughout the entire pandemic from activists, community groups, etc., is that there is a very serious need in this community, in this state, in this country for affordable and workforce housing. It's no secret, and it's not unique to New Bedford. It's a statewide and national issue. Well, we're certainly leading that charge here in the city of New Bedford, and we're setting an example of how we can take American Rescue Act funds, how we can leverage those dollars, partner with great folks like Mr. Kavanaugh and many others to get these properties online, get them ready to go, so that individuals who are in need of affordable or workforce housing can be housed here in the city of New Bedford. I've always said that I have no problem, and I fully support market rate housing developments here in the city of New Bedford. I have for a while now. However, with every market rate development that comes in the city, there has to be some type of workforce and or affordable housing component to it. If there isn't, it really doesn't get my support, because we have a serious need here in the city of New Bedford to house and help those who are at the median or below the median range income levels here in this community. And we have an obligation to assist them and get them the housing that they need. So again, thank you to the mayor, thank you to everyone here, our federal delegation, thank you to folks like Jerry Kavanaugh, whom I've known for a while, going back to the old Chamber of Commerce days when he was on our board of directors. I'm happy to see him and his team here today and to kind of punch this in through the end zone. This is a good day for New Bedford. Help is on the way if you're in need of housing. You get that? Help is on the way. So again, thank you very much. And without further ado, I know Shane Burgo wanted to give a few remarks as well. Shane?
Thank you. And I'll keep it brief. I echo a lot of the same sentiments of my colleague. Housing is the foundation of family well-being. So I just want to thank the developers for investing in New Bedford and investing in our families. I look forward to growing our housing stock here in New Bedford and working to solve this crisis, which, as Mayor Mitchell pointed out, is a nationwide issue. And that's all I'll share with you today. Thank you.
All right, thank you both for your support. I want to call up Pat Sullivan now. Pat's been at this work, at the work of housing for a long time, and we've done many press conferences along the way. Pat has served the city all the way back to the Tierney administration and has done such a fabulous job marshaling federal resources, especially, and state resources and city resources to create housing opportunities for New Bedford residents over the course of his career. He is nationally recognized as an authority. People call Pat from all over the country with questions that they don't want to share with their mayors. They don't want to betray that they don't know the ins and outs of federal housing policy. So in many ways, Pat has served as a phone a friend for many housing directors across the United States during his time in office without any fanfare at all, and has done a great job for us. And on this particular set of proposals, Pat, what has facilitated our getting from approval of the ARPA funding or acceptance of the ARPA funding from the City Council to actual implementation now so quickly is as a result of the work that Pat and his team have done. They know exactly how to create this new framework and get the money out the door in a way that is compliant with myriad regulations at the federal level, and to do it swiftly and accurately. The recommendations that he made to me for funding, I adopted to the letter, and these come straight from him. And Pat is going to be retiring soon. I don't know if that's public yet, Pat.
It is.
Is it? It is now, if it isn't. And I just, this may be one of our last press conferences together, but I would just ask everybody to join me in a round of applause for all the great work that Pat has done over the years. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate those kind words, Mayor, and it's been a pleasure working with the city on these types of developments. And these 5 projects are really unique in that you have several, this one and the one on 109 Hillman Street, that weren't built for housing and are going to be adaptive reuse. And this building has sat vacant for a number of years, as has 109 Hillman Street. And I think between the efforts of Terry at Whale, Jerry and Colleen on this project, Steve Beauregard on Union Street, and Dwayne Jackson on the other Union Street, you have a really incredible mix of developments. And the 2 on Union Street, Steve's and Dwayne Jackson's, are going to be the first new construction in the downtown for housing probably since the Regency Towers project back in the 80s. So very transformative. I think the mayor's commitment of funding on these 5 projects is unprecedented in my tenure with the city, and that's 30 years. So it shows, it demonstrates a commitment on the mayor's part to get these projects to work. And I think the use of the ARPA funds, how they're intended, was so critical, because each of these projects had a gap. Each of them had a funding gap, and the only way that they could move forward is with ARPA funds. And I couldn't think of a better use for that. And I also, the mayor mentioned the Home Investment Partnership Program that our office administers, and through the efforts of Congressman Keating and our federal delegation, we're able to secure those dollars every year. And there's a little over $6 million of home funds invested in these 5 projects, and that's to ensure that there's an affordability component. So all told, I just want to congratulate all the developers for this tremendous investment, and thank them for choosing New Bedford to spend their hard-earned dollars and to transform some of these vacant buildings into vital housing for the future. So thank you to everyone, and thanks again, Mayor, for those very kind thoughts. Appreciate it.
Well done. All right, thank you, Pat. So I want to talk about this particular project because this is something that is really special, will be special for many people in the city. So we're standing here in the middle of the St. Lawrence complex, right? St. Lawrence Church, the city's first Irish church, the rectory, and of course, Holy Family High School. I do want to thank my good friend, Father Mike Racine, for allowing us to take the spotlight here today, and but he will totally get what I'm about to say. Holy Family holds a special place in New Bedford's history. This is, as historians of New Bedford will explain, this is sort of the pathway that the Irish moved up from the waterfront, from a neighborhood right by the tracks that no longer exist called the Holy Acre, up through the 19th century westward to this neighborhood, which became the center of Irish and then later Newfoundland Irish life in America. And really the nerve center of it all was right here at Holy Family High School. And so in many ways, you know, as it is with Irish storytelling, the stories from Holy Family get better with every telling, but the Holy Family has sort of continues, even though it's been closed for some 35, almost 40 years now as a high school, still has this cultish following. I can say that. You could use that word loosely. I think I've licensed to do that because I've had so many relatives who've attended Holy Family High School, including both of my parents, and so it holds a special place for so many in the city. And somebody came up to me, and I know I've been in office for 10 years, about 10 years ago, and said, you know, you got elected, you didn't get elected on your resume or anything, you got elected because of all your connections to Holy Family High School. And I said, that's about right. It is a closely knit place even today, long after the doors of the school finally closed. And but it has long sat here essentially as a storage facility, and now it's coming back to life. It is so. This is, to my mind, as much a historic preservation project as it is a housing development. To be able to preserve this place in the long run, and to activate it for the neighborhood and to continue to see its vibrancy is so important, not just for this neighborhood, but for the entire city and for everybody who has a connection to the St. Lawrence Church parish and to the former high school. So, you know, no better person to redevelop it than one of our own, who delighted in vanquishing Holy Family, the vaunted Holy Family High School basketball team, while he was playing for Stang. Those stories all get better with every telling too, especially if they're coming from Paul Walsh and some of the players from Holy Family. But and that's Jerry Kavanaugh. And I just really want to thank, you know, Jerry, over the course of his career, has never forgotten where he's from. He is, as much as he's succeeded in Washington and Boston in a number of capacities, it's always been back to New Bedford for him. And his development here, as well as in other sites, are going to be hugely beneficial for the city, and the work that both he and Colleen have done have been amazing already, and there's more great stuff to come. And we want to just thank you, Jerry, for all of your hard work, and Colleen for all of your hard work, and really thoughtful work and care about how this particular project would get executed. And Jerry, just want to ask you to come on up and tell us what it's all going to look like.
Thanks very much.
Exactly.
Thanks very much. Let me thank first Mayor Mitchell for making this project a reality and making the other four a reality. They probably would not start construction without the mayor's intervention. And I want to congratulate the other four who are also being awarded today, because these projects are they're really hard to pull off in normal times. In normal times, they're really hard to get to the goal line. But in this environment, with a global pandemic, now inflation, labor shortages, price escalation, it's really, really impossible to get into the ground unless you have everyone working together. And this project took an enormous number of people to come together all along the way. And all of these projects have these tipping points, right? Where you get to a certain point in the project and it can fail, or it can move to the next level, or it can slow down, or it can move to the next level. And in all of these projects, there are a number of people who have made them happen. And I want to point out who the people were on this project that got us to where we are today. And we're very close. We're going to start construction, I don't know, probably in 60 days. But we're only going to start construction because of the money that the city is putting in. So when we got to those different tipping points, and it was teetering one way or the other, certain people stepped up and made it happen. And the first person who did that, probably a half a dozen times, was Pat Sullivan. This project would not be going without Pat Sullivan. Full stop. Full stop. There were half a dozen times when Colleen called him up and said, Pat, I got a problem with this or that. And Pat was able to solve it for us. At the same time, though, as the project went along, there were other people who also made it happen. We had a fairly raucous planning board hearing one night, and the next day, the very next morning, Colleen got the team together for the project and said, okay guys, I'll take it from here. And any of us who know Colleen know that when she says, I'll take it from here, she's going to take it from here. And she did, and now she spends hours a week negotiating with the lawyers on getting to a closing. Hopefully, we were hoping to do it by June 30th, but we'll certainly do it by July 15th. What she also did, though, was she teamed up with Father Mike. And the night that Father Mike, at the hearing, said, I am in favor of this project, the tide started to turn. And people started to come together and really wanted to do it. But finally is the mix of people at City Hall and the City Council and the Housing Authority, the mix of people that came together to help us get here was really incredible. And Colleen and I, we're building projects like this in 7 other cities right now. This city hall is the most professional, the most cooperative, and that's quite a tribute to the mayor who has assembled this team of people. They are cooperative, they are professional, the boards, the staff. Ian and his group at the city council stepped up when they needed to help us. Ian, I'm not sure you know this, but one night at a hearing, Scott Lima stepped up when there were people who were questioning the project and said, be careful about what you do on this, because this can be a good project. You need to decide whether it is, but don't prejudge the project. And that too turned the tide at a community meeting right in that church that Colleen was running. So here's what we have. We have a project, and also, Mayor, my mother went here also. My mother went to Holy Family High School. And when Steve Beauregard, who deserves an enormous amount of credit, because he's the one who called me up and said, you know, you ought to think of the Holy Family High School. I didn't even know it was, I don't even think I knew it was still here. But when I went by it, I said, I want to redevelop this property. Not just because my mother went there, but that had something to do with it. But because it is an iconic building, and it's an iconic place. And I did go to school, Mayor, with lots of guys, including Paul, who went to Holy Family. And we spent many, many Thursday nights and Saturday afternoons in downtown New Bedford with Holy Family people, Holy Family and staying kids, talking about what happened the night before. But Steve called me up and said, you need to do this. And then he said, I'll help you with the pre-development financing. So he was a catalyst for this to happen. So here's what we have here, though. We have a building that's been vacant and boarded up for almost 40 years. That's going to now be a new community asset, an iconic asset for this neighborhood. Secondly, though, is we're going to be able to provide housing for teachers, firefighters, EMTs, childcare workers, the real essential workers of our economy. And thirdly, we've already, through this process, hired local folks. We've hired a local law firm to do our legal work. We've hired a local engineer to do our civil work. And we're hiring local subs to redevelop the building. So it's a terrific project, and I know that the other recipients feel the same way, but Mayor, we cannot thank you enough for really, really, really making these projects a reality. Thank you very much.
All right, I want to thank everybody again for all their hard work, and I do wish to emphasize a point that has been made by Jerry and Pat, and that is that these projects, doing these kinds of developments in our market is not easy. This is not a major metro where there is developers tripping over themselves to buy land, to build stuff. There is a complicated set of rules and financing associated with them that has been difficult for us to pull off. The new federal money has enabled that to happen, and the skill of Pat and his team and the developers have gotten it over the goal line. So I want to thank all of you for that, and for everybody for their investment in New Bedford. With that, I will open it up to questions. Okay. Oh, yeah, I could see Jack searching. It's like, I cannot. Oh, okay. Okay. Go ahead. I'll stand in the shade.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Special project for you. Diocese has recently closed the school across the street, the elementary school, Holy Family Elementary, Holy Name. Are you or your company in discussions right now with developing housing there, and would it be affordable or market rate?
We have not been in any discussions with them. We've been so busy on this particular project, I haven't even discussed it with the bishop.
You must have some sense of whether it has potential.
It has a lot of potential. Let me just say that. It would be an easier project to do just because it's so much bigger and you could do so much more with it. Thank you.
This next is from Pat, I guess.
Pat, your turn.
So I noticed that the announcement was the Carvella Apartments on Upper Union. I have a political prominent member of the African American community that name has now been changed because the Carvella was the name of the slave ships that the Portuguese used. Enslaved
I was not aware of that. I'm assuming that, the developer did. He was African American.
Dwayne Jackson.
Yes.
Okay. A couple more for the mayor.
Ms. Jack, there's no quota here. Go ahead.
So, for much of your mayorship, you've really emphasized market rate housing. That's been your thing. You wanted New Bedford, which has struggled to attract the middle class in recent years to develop market rate housing. A lot of challenges to that in terms of making it profitable for the developers. Have you changed now with the current housing crisis? Are you more focused on affordable housing as an emphasis for the city? Because all of the major developments in the city right now are affordable.
Well, that's not correct. So, as I said in my remarks, we support housing at every income level. So, right now, in addition, there is a mix of market rate, right? Market rate and affordable, I think, sometimes confuse people as terms, right? And they are euphemistic in some to a great degree. We're really talking about income restricted and non-income restricted. Of the 150 apartments that are part of this set of 5 developments, most have some income restriction, but there are different levels of income restriction. There are some market rate units as well among them. There are, separately from these 5 developments, there are other developments going on that are all market rate. So there are a couple that come to mind downtown, and Pat could probably speak to them in more detail, but there's the one that Dennis Cohen is doing on William Street. There's the 5 North Water Street property, the building that the burger place, D&B Burger, was once housed in. That's all market rate, and there's some developments in the north end that potentially could be all market rate as well. So there's a mix, and as there should be. We don't want to be all of one thing or another.
So you're still emphasizing market rate primarily, or?
That's not what I said. What I said was that we want a mix. There is a mix from non-income restricted to income restricted, and income restricted at different levels.
Okay. The last question I have is, given the vastness of the current problem nationwide of affordable housing has now reached New Bedford, these are laudable projects, but how big a difference?
I don't stand up here in court to say that this is going to solve the affordability of housing in New Bedford. Look, we're not trying to overstate this, but what people should know is that we are doing something about it by facilitating the development of housing. One of the problems, one of the constraints that New Bedford has is that we're a pretty dense place that is almost entirely built out. That's why we had to go convert part of our municipal golf course to commercial development because there's no other place to put it. The same goes for residential construction. There are very few places around the city to put single-family homes at this point. And where you can go, you're not going to be able to put too many at all. And so our housing expansion is essentially going to be vertical. It's not going to be, in this case, this is only 2 stories high, 2.5 stories high, but in many other cases, we'll have to go higher. And that requires, in this market, some level of subsidy.
Given that these individual projects that can't solve the whole systemic problem, are you developing a plan to try to address this systemic problem, or is that not possible?
Again, the city government is not in the business business of building housing. This city, nor any other city in the country, so with the limited, what's that?
I said you're developing a plan to address the problem of systemic housing.
I'm getting to your question. So our job is to facilitate the development of housing. So developers have to come forward. So that's what we're doing. That's what this press conference is about. It's about responding to the market, right? So we have, there are incentives available to us to facilitate development. We do that. Pat Sullivan's been doing that for 30 years. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming today, and once again, thanks for all the support, and especially to the developers for their investments in our city.